this workshop. I know it's called applying branding skills to, improve our education. And that was actually a term that was coined during an article that wrote about KultureMAG in Forbes magazine. And at one point, when I first began my efforts in really trying to understand students and really trying to bring to students something that can meet them where they are, um, I really didn't understand exactly what it was I was doing. I know there are times in our classrooms, there are times where we're in the world where we do something and we approach it with all good intent, but we often, not understand, we don't have an understanding of what exactly its effect is. And so um, Forbes magazine coined that term. You can look the article up. I'll actually put in the chat for you right now. I didn't think to do it, but now I will do it. Um, and when they wrote this article, it helped me to understand a little bit more about what it is that culture is and what it is that my company is providing for the world. So the article is actually in the chat to the side. So feel free to look at that article, skim through it. There are a lot of other great educational programs that are being used to, again, meet students where they are. When I say the term applying branding principles to improve education, what does that sound like in today's world?
My first thought is like, okay, applying Nike to this. But then I'm like, no, branding principles, applying the same tools that Nike uses to be successful. So people kind of ingrain some behaviors.
I say routines. I think routines.
Yeah.
Because there's certain things that industry does that is consistent and people can rely on that, and that's part of their branding.
Yeah.
That's where my brain went.
Anybody else? Those are both great answers. I heard routine, so in some form, consistency. I heard using, like Nike and the way they approach and their methodology and the way they reach students, what they reach consumers, I would say. Kelly?
Hi, good morning. I think for me, it makes me feel comfortable because I've always felt like we should have a marketing division in each school. There's always a mystery sort of to the community as to what's going on in the school. And as educators, we just don't really have the time to always market effectively how wonderful our students are and what they're actually doing. So it made me feel comfortable. And then it also, I think, makes it very loud and clear what the values are of the school if we can brand it correctly. So if we truly do care about social emotional learning, for example, are we making that clear to the students when they walk in, and just holding it to that higher standard?
I agree with it. I love every answer. And to put emphasis on it and kind of bring this this definition together, or what I think as well, is every school has its own culture and every classroom has its own subculture. So and at home, there's a culture that exists as well. And so in society, there is also a culture. So from every student, from them waking up in the morning to entering into their home culture, to them going on the bus, there's a bus culture. From them going from the bus and they pass by different signs, different stores, there's a culture around in the community. And then from they leave the community, go into the school, and now we have to often ask ourselves, what is our school culture? And then from our school culture, does our classroom culture and our school culture, is it consistent? Is it synonymous? Is it seamless? Because I've heard many students say, and I even said it myself, where I like a teacher's class, but I didn't like the school itself. And I think in order for us to really, improve education, we need to understand what culture is and understand that we are creating culture. Yes, culture is inherited. Yes, we carry things from our home lives, we carry things from our past lives, we carry history throughout history. But at the end of the day, we need to encourage a culture where students can feel that they too can be a part of this. They too can have some say, and they too can put their what and personality into this. And so when I think social emotional learning, I think of the importance of letting students know that they belong, that they have a voice, And in order for us to do that, we need to create worlds, those subcultures, those classroom cultures, that school culture that amplifies those spaces. And so what I'm here to talk to you about today is how I've had the opportunity in the past 4 years to understand more about this, to work with educators, to build a platform and a product that speaks towards students on a social, emotional learning level, diversity level, and most importantly, meets students where they are. How we doing? Is everything good? I'm still here with y'all?
Great.
All right, cool. Because I know just a second ago, we had that little mishap. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen, and I will open up a slideshow presentation. Are any of you, before I actually do this, I feel like it's important for me to do it, to ask if you can just quickly introduce yourself. Let's about 9 of us, so it shouldn't take too much time. Introduce yourself, where you're from, why'd you even sign up for this workshop, and something good about 2019.
I'm going first on that one. So I am Rachel Riendo. I'm a teacher for the Connecticut Technical High School System and a department head and a board member for CCSS. I'm here for 2 reasons. One, I get to host your lovely Zoom room, but also I picked yours in particular because it seemed like something different than the norm for a professional development session in education. I felt like I would be able to pull a lot from what you're sharing with us today.
Something good about 2020, what happened?
Oh, something good about 2020. I feel like my kids got closer to each other because they were super dependent on each other when we were all quarantined. Here, I'll pass it off to Kelly. That's what we'll do, so that way we don't.
Okay. Thank you. So something really good about 2020, a meditation group that I've been a part of for a few years now has just expanded internationally because we have to get together online. So like now I get together with these people from around the country and around the world. So that's really great. I can't wait to see them in person someday. I chose this one because as much as I'm an educator and on the board of the Connecticut Council for Social Studies, I'm also getting my EDD in a new program that's in social emotional ed leadership. So that's just where my heart is in teaching. But also I loved the title of the session because to me, I get really frustrated and angry when we talk about social emotional learning separate from, and we can use a lot of different phrases, you know, culturally responsive education. I just don't think the two are separate. They're one and the same thing. And so it just seemed like that's how this title or this session was probably viewing social emotional learning as well.
Yeah, I'm here first off as a supporter of Culture Magazine, just someone that is really excited for the work that y'all doing in terms of accessing students and building up. It's more than self-confidence, right? So it's believing in yourself, but it's also believing in each other and that community piece that you were talking about. So that's why I'm here in this session. Additionally, something positive that's happened for me for 2020 is that I started doing like an evening walk with my wife every day and my dog. So it's been just like a really nice time to be able to get out into the environment, regardless of the temperature, and just spend some time disconnected from technology. And another thing that's forthcoming in 2020 that I'm looking forward to is deleting almost all of my social media accounts. So I've been kind of reducing my hyper connection. And by doing that, by again, getting rid of some of my accounts that I feel that have just been more of a time suck and a energy suck than they have been contributing to my life in a positive way. And I picked that up from you, Mr. Valentine.
I think we have 2 more, Mary and Lewis.
Hi, I'm Mary Scully, and I had explained to my friends out there that I'm in my pajamas and a mess, so I'm not turning on my video. But I'm a retired educator, I'm on the board, And I've always believed that, we don't teach the content. We teach students first. That's the primary piece. And so if we can't engage our students and be, know them, to be able to bring them to their absolute best, then we haven't done our job. So the social emotional has always been very important to me. And so I work with pre-service teachers right now, just on a part-time basis. So helping them make sure that they focus on the child also is important to me. So that's why I'm interested in your session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we have one more, and then I'll get right to it. All right, no worries. Thank you all for sharing. Thanks, it helps me understand, what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. And I'm glad that there is some light that you are all are able to share, in 2020. And hopefully 2021 is a better year. So first and foremost, I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So culture, dream, try, do. And so like I stated before, culture is something, culture with a C is something that is inherited. And culture with a K is, our effort in helping students, helping educators, helping administrators understand that in moving forward, we must be inspired, but we must also go and create what culture that we want, the culture we want to exist, and the culture that we want to see. And this was a great quote that resonated with me, in the preparation for this conference and in the preparation for previous meetings that I've held these past few months with superintendents. And it says, you don't make progress by standing on the sidelines, whimpering and complaining. You make progress by implementing ideas. And it's my firm belief that what we need more than anything right now is not only just ideas, but execution on those ideas, whether they be the best idea in the world or the worst. I mean, there's another quote that states, the best thing you can do is your best. The second best thing you can do is something. And the worst thing you can do is nothing. And so what we'll cover briefly why this is important, frequently asked questions that educators are asking, a story about purpose, what is culture, our goal, why us, how culture is used, a quick walkthrough, and a few other things. So I've had the opportunity to speak to over 20,000 high school students in the past 2 years as a motivational speaker, diversity speaker on some occasions. And following those sessions, many of them, when I had social media, had Instagram at the time, would reach out to me via direct message. And they would share these heartfelt and fulfilling messages, sharing how, they struggle with bullying, depression, they struggle with low self-esteem, they struggle with being misunderstood. Some of them struggle with drug abuse or being in a household where drug is used, and they struggle with social injustices and right now, social distancing and remote learning. And they would tell me how the words that resonated with them, the words that I said, that moment of me connecting with them, that moment of me meeting them where they are. And I'm going to use that term a lot through this presentation, meeting students where they are, help them in that moment. And these are some of the things that our students are struggling with, not just in 2020, but also in 2019 and 2018. And there are also adults struggling with many of these things. And, right here, what I'm showing you all on the screen is some of the exact messages from seniors, from juniors, from freshmen, from sophomores, and even some middle school students who said to me, like, what you did, what you said was very impactful. And I've often found that a teacher may say the exact same thing in a different way, but because it's coming from an outside source and it comes from a person who represents a brand that speaks towards them more, they become a lot more receptive to it. It's not that teachers aren't saying, it's not that the classroom doesn't say it. It's just sometimes we need a different vessel, a vesicle to carry that message. And that's why we see brands such as Nike, we see brands such as Netflix, we see brands such as Instagram captivating these audiences. And so here are some questions that I've come across that many educators have shared with me, such as how can we effectively address social emotional learning and diversity within remote, hybrid, and in-classroom settings for the upcoming school year? What resources are out there that provide progressive academic content that students will engage with? And then another question is, how do we show our students we care? And I'll jump down to the last question, which I think is very important as well, which is there a way to assess student growth and character? I mean, oftentimes when we think about it, how do we assess student growth? How do we assess student character? Because that's not really a quantitative measurement. It's more of a qualitative. And so I'll tell you a quick story about one EMT. So many of you probably do not know this, but I'm so sorry. I am also a part-time EMT in the state of Connecticut. I work in the south end of Hartford for Aetna Ambulance. We're celebrating 75 years of service. And my degree is actually in biology. For those of you who don't know, I am Anthony Valentine, live in the flesh. And there was one moment when I transported a high school student, high school junior or senior, I believe, from the Connecticut Children's Medical Center to at IOL Institute of Living. And I've transported many different young adults during this time in the past 4 years that I've worked there. And of those experiences, of those encounters, I have about maybe 5 minutes to an hour to literally sit here and either talk to them or give them their space. Most times I talk to them. I try to invest in them. I try to pour into them. I try to meet them where they are. This young adult attempted suicide because she was in a school where she felt her voice wasn't heard. She felt she was a part of a culture or inside a culture or swallowed by a culture that didn't pay attention to her needs, didn't pay attention to her voice, and didn't paid only attention to her differences. I remember meeting her where she was. I had a conversation with her. I gave her some advice. And a few months later, I remember dropping another patient off and this young woman calling out to me saying, "Hey, I remember you." And although I didn't remember her because I meet a lot of people, she said, "I remember you." And she said, "Although I'm here, I'm doing so much better." And I say this and I share this story for you all to know that it's important for us to meet our students where they are. Because many times we want to pull students along to where we want them to be, but not sitting down and understanding their worlds, where they come from. What is it that this student is going through that this student might be going through, and how can we bring how can we grow together? And so my team and I, we started Culture because we saw a need. And so what is Culture? So in the most simplest terms ever, if you know what Scholastic News is, and you know what pop culture is, if Scholastic News and pop culture had a baby, it would be KultureMAG, period. Meeting students where they are. Because students are invested and are engaged in Instagram. They're engaged in Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. They're engaged on Netflix. They're engaged in all these pop cultural, instruments. And Scholastic News is also an educational instrument. So what happens when you take education, but you make it cool? Or what happens when you take branding principles, you create something that students will engage with first, and then you support it by education? So it's so seamless that students don't even understand that they are learning about character, that they are learning about diversity, that they are learning about themselves. And that is what Culture does. It's both print and digital. Living in the world that we're living in now, we need to make sure that there's some digital capabilities and tendencies so that educators can use it. And so it's used to promote literacy, through its articles, critical thinking, through its lesson plans and its assignments, relationship building, through its activities, reading. And I want to pinpoint on reading. If you notice Instagram, and you notice Twitter, and you notice um, TikTok, you notice Facebook, think about how many characters you're allowed to write in a tweet, or how many characters you're allowed to write in an Instagram post, how many you're allowed to write in a comment. Well, if our students are on these instruments 5 to 8 times a day, they get conditioned to being more receptive to these short, fragmented um, pieces of writing, as opposed to something that is stretched out and a little bit more longer. And so our goal is to grow with a student, to meet them again where they are. So when students use culture on their at the introduction, the writing isn't as much, but it's something that you can grow into. Once you engage, then moving forward, you begin to learn more. KultureMAG is supported with lesson plans and curriculum that adhere to Common Core standards. And I'll give you a even more defined definition of KultureMAG. I remember reading Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, and I would always get to the end but never finish it. And it's a lesson about finishing what you start. Once I finally got to the end and finished the book, there was a message, there was a key point that I missed for so long. And that message is being a translator. And so for a very long time, I was translating this magazine, this product, directly to students, and they understood it. But educators never understood it. They didn't understand its effectiveness. And so the most important thing that I needed to do was figure out how can I, as a entrepreneur who cares about education, translate this message into a language educators can understand. And so I put that word out there for you also to think about. How can you translate the information about U.S. history, the information about the election, the information about social injustices, the information about Native Americans, just information? How can you translate that into a language and ideas that students can understand? And so a good solution for that is through engagement. Engaging them by any reason, and that might be through a movie. That might be watching a movie that is current today, and then making a connection to a something in history that happened maybe 100 to 200, 300 years prior. With KultureMAG, what we did was we surveyed 200 students before we actually figured out if place education curriculum behind it. We just gave them a magazine. We gave 200 students a magazine from 4 different high schools. And this was during a time where print was okay. And of those 200 students from 4 different high schools, from many different backgrounds, many different beliefs, many different religions, different districts, we asked them, we want you to rate this magazine on from 1 to 5 on its inspirational level. Does it inspire you? Is it shareable? Is this something that you would share? Is it relatable? Is it something that you relate to? And is this cool overall? And I want you to understand that these 4 principles, these 4 building blocks are the same building blocks that Instagram uses, Twitter uses, Facebook uses. Does it inspire you? Would you share it with your friends? Is it something you would follow? Is it relatable? Because we're only going to follow things that we relate to, or there's an Explorer page that starts showing you content that relates to you. And overall, is it cool? Is it dope? And what we found is that 4 out of 5 students thought that culture was all the above: inspirational, shareable, relatable, and overall cool. And I use 4 out of 5 loosely because there is no 0.5 of a student or 0.3 of a student, but the real numbers were like 4.5, 4.3, so on and so forth. Once we learned this, we were able to take culture and we were able to say, okay, now we can add curriculum behind this. Now we can have articles that speak towards someone who is diverse. And behind that, these students are then learning about different occupations. They're learning about individuals who are 5 years older than them who are servicing their communities. They're being exposed to different options. They're being exposed to different photography, different art, different writings. And when we went a step further, we figured, okay, now that we have this educational component, and now that we applied branding principles, now that we're meeting students where they are, who is this for? Well, essentially, it'd be for districts and administrators looking to connect and engage with students. Districts, administrators looking to increase diversity awareness with students, and districts and administrators looking to promote social and emotional learning with students. And so when we got down to the student level, we figured, all right, so with our data, what type of students could this service? And we figured out that from looking through our table, students of any background, any social emotional level, students from suburban, urban, and rural areas, 7th through 12th grade, public, private, magnet, and best used in English, advisory, and social studies courses. And so this was our 4-step framework. This was our model. This was what we figured out culture is built off of. When we had the whole engaging piece together, we needed to figure how can we make the educational and the branding aspect of it work synonymously and work together. And it was in 2018 that I went to South by Southwest in Texas. And it hit me. I realized that every 4 years we transition. You see, in America, we operate on this 4-year system. What do I mean? Well, every 4 years we get a new president, or we have elections, presidential elections. Every 4 years is a World Cup. Every 4 years, we go from elementary school to middle school, from middle school to high school, from high school to college. We find this number 4 so repetitive in our foundation and in our development. Everything is broken up into 4s. And when I honed in on it a little bit deeper, I reflected and I had to assess, how did I spend my 4 years in middle school? How did I spend my 4 years in high school, in elementary school, and in college? And I'll just take college, for example. Let's think about it. That first year of college, you're learning about everything under the sun, things you may not even be interested in. For goodness sakes, you're taking gym class as a freshman in college. Second year, you then kind of, all right, I know what I want to do, but I'm not truly sure. But you start focusing. Maybe you might have declared a major. So now you're specifically like me, you're taking just biology courses and a few other courses, but just biology. Then that third year, what are you doing? You start on an internship. Let's think about high school. That third year, you're applying to colleges. You are not only applying to colleges, you're taking your PSATs, SATs, depending on what year you are. In that fourth year, you're assessing. You're reflecting on everything you've done prior and preparing yourself for what you need to do to move forward. And to show you how this works, I just want to put emphasis on this 4-step plan and what we found out. When you get your first job, think about it. You're learning all over again. Then that second year or that second month, you start doing. Then that third, you execute. You start living out. You're on project after project. And that fourth year, you might take a step and say, all right, well, I love what I'm doing, but I think I want to enter into a new field. I think I want to work under a new occupation, so on and so forth. And so when we learned that, we figured this is the way to support the idea of applying branding principles with education by creating a product that can be backed by the LBEA model. First, students learn. They learn from information from multi-perspectives. And they also take a pre-assessment, because that is how we measure that student growth, through a pre and post assessment. That pre-assessment allows for students to answer questions about their own social emotional learning and where they are, as well as the diversity level. Questions like, how many friends do you have of a different idea, race, gender, belief system? You know, how often do you take the time to see somebody else's perspective, whether it be a stranger, your parents, a teacher, or even somebody that you don't know who's homeless? How often? You know, questions such as, how often do you set goals for yourself? You know, how often do you think about your future? And so this is our method of allowing students and educators to learn about, you know, where they are, where they're starting from. Because by the end of the school year, they then take a post-assessment. And that post-assessment, the questions are similar, but it allows, you know, to measure, it allows us to understand and to assess where students are beginning and where students are ending. And so again, learn is that first step, and then building is that second step. You know, you build using the learned information to build into this, I can't pronounce that word, I'm sorry, plus non-academic connections with oneself, classmates, in the world. And then on that third step, you then execute. They execute by using those lessons and the learned information to create, remember that key word, create, and execute change through actionable plans, goals through goal setting and communication building, helping to develop oneself. And then lastly, they assess. And now again, this is the same model that we've been operating, been like using for since we were in kindergarten. And so what is the goal of culture? Realistically, consistency is very important, as we said. And understanding the importance of branding principles is also important. And meeting students where they are is also important. Creating culture is also important. And so our goal with culture is to establish long-standing partnerships, not just a one and done, but long-standing partnerships so we can see student growth. Because as we learned, first the student has to learn. You have to learn first, and that might take a year. Then that second year, they got to build on that. That's their sophomore year. Then that third year, they have to execute. And then that fourth year, they assess. And so it's our goal that in 4 years, students can become who, you know, we hope for them to be. Sometimes it may take 2, it may take 1. And so again, culture meets students where they are. It alleviates stress on educators because it's a plug and play. It provides guided lesson plans. You know, lesson plans are already together, curriculum is already together, but we do encourage educators to create their own lessons where they see fit. They know they know what they're teaching better than my team would. It appeals to students' social media preference. It promotes goal setting, relationship development, leadership, and interdependence. And so I'll kind of share with you what what each subscription, because we provide like a subscription-based model, and that was our way of like bringing to educators this idea of how magazines operate into the educational setting. And so we only come out with 2 issues per year. Why? Because there needs to be that level of anticipation, that level of excitement for students. Students want to be excited. Students want to look forward to something. And what better way to do that than to create a limitation on it? Think about if you have children or if you have nieces or nephews, how excited they get for their birthday or the holiday. A birthday only comes once a year, but they get so excited for that one day. And because they know they're going to get some gifts and spend time with family. And so we operate within that same realm of 2 issues per year, something to look forward to, something to be excited about. And then it also comes with the educator's guide, and it comes with a facilitator's guide, and the social emotional learning pre and post assessment. And so what I'll do is I will give you a quick digital walkthrough. I'll give you a quick digital walkthrough, figure out how to work this thing. Are there any questions? I feel I should ask if there are any questions. Good. No questions? Okay. Screen share. Okay. Share. So this is what KultureMAG.com looks like. And again, branding is very, very, very important. So when students come to this site, it was our goal to make them feel as though they're on Instagram, they're on TikTok. Vibrant colors, things that, lift up the spirit, smiley faces, paint splatter, a little bit of like that artistic design. Font is very important. All of this plays into the bigger picture. And I think as educators, as educators, it's important to figure out what is the core ethos of your classroom. Do your values, show forth in the classroom? Through those values, and does your classroom allow students to grow into what it is that you see as the big picture? And in order to understand that, you might have to actually have to ask students, where are they? And what I mean is, where are they mentally? Where are they emotionally? Where are they socially? Where are they? What kind of clothes do they wear? What kind of music do they listen to? And there's a way to use all of that to create this space where students feel accepted, where students also learn. Because if there's a student who listens to, say, jazz, and there's a student who listens to, say, hip hop, there's a way to infuse the two where both students can learn about the diversity and about the diversity that presents itself and that exists in this class. So I just want to walk you through this, just to give you an idea of how we do it. So we're actually having a concert on November 20th, and it's a free virtual concert for students. So if any of you have students, it's free. You all can attend. You can see how we've effectively met students where they are. We're meeting them through music with this concert, and we're helping to inspire them through this concert, and helping to just give them a good night of good vibes, letting them know that we care, because that's what this is about. If you can show them that you care, show them that you love them, show them that you appreciate them, they'll be receptive to that at some point. So I encourage you all to RSVP. Students would essentially come here, and you see, the thing about branding is it needs to be consistent, very much so. And then an educator or school or a student would enter into an access code, and from that access code, it would then take them to this page. And so, again, the ethos of culture is to inspire, to build, to help students believe in themselves, and help students to see how they themselves fit into the world. And so, again, this page is just a constant scroll. When you look at social media, you look at it's just a constant scroll. Everything is on that page, it's constant scroll. And so we took some of those same principles. And from there, first thing students do is, my truth. What is your truth? They would go here. They would take this pre-assessment. They would see, all right, well, who am I? Life is about growth. You don't know where you've come from. You won't know where you're going if you don't know where you're going. Take a second to reflect on who you are, where you are in life. And what this assessment does is it also helps educators, again, see where students are. Because how do we know where we're going if we don't know where we are? And many of these students, they come with traumas, they come with anxieties, they come with depressions, they come with cultures that they've grown up in that doesn't support the classroom that you're growing. And so I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but I just want to give you an idea of what this how this functions. And so students are asked, like, please describe yourself using the first 3 words that come to mind. And I want you to think of 3 words that come to your mind. Students are asked what are their favorite songs or favorite movies, just to learn a little bit more about them. Because with that information, you can then do a movie night. And from a movie night, depending on the genre, you can then have discussion based on themes that relate to your class. Again, applying branding principles. If 2020 was a mood, what would it be? And so for the sake of this, let's say, I'm just going to say mine is right here. So again, we're using GIFs. This is speaking their language. How often do you think of your future? Me, 9 out of 10. How often do you set goals for yourself? Let's say 6 out of 10. Do you create plans to reach these goals? We'll say yeah, sometimes no. And so I share that with you so you all can see that those answers, once answered, using KultureMAG or any other branding opportunity or using anything, you can see how effective your approach was, because by the end of the year, if that student hasn't grown, all right, what can we do next year to help you grow? And if this is what the magazine looks like. I figured I'll show you all this. So this is what KultureMAG looks like. Very vibrant. It's print and it's digital. It's photography, letter from the editor, more stuff. What is culture? Culture with a K. Translate me. It says stay hungry. More artwork. Short excerpts. And then we come down to our first article, which is a musician who's doing work within the community. And then here's another article. And then if we go down a little bit further, what we find is we find all activities and assignments and outlines that are needed for student work. So for example, lesson 101, Educator may say, all right, well, I want you to go to lesson 101. I want you to watch this video down here, how much $1 costs, and then I want you to download interview assessment outline. And then with that interview assessment outline, that student may go here, and from there, they can see the questions, the rubric, exactly what class 1 will entail, class 2 will entail, class 2, and class 3 and class 4. And all of this is done, through this space. And again, when I put emphasis on meeting students where they are, it's important to make sure everything is already there. I'm going to stop for a second. Are there any questions?
Where would you embed this in as far as a course goes at the secondary level? Is it often used in kind of a health or a life skills sort of course, or do you think it's something that could be embedded in multiple areas?
So it can be embedded in multiple areas. I said it earlier, it's a plug and play model. So once you see the curriculum, you see the magazine, you find that there can be connections made to, let's say, Raisin in the Sun. If you're doing a chapter on the Harlem Renaissance and you're reading the Raisin in the Sun, what happens to a dream deferred? You then can resort to the magazine and resort to its content and allow students to then go out and interview people, find out what the definition of success is. Because although we provide curriculum and our own lesson plannings, our material allows teachers to fit it to their own work and it's about translating. We created a product that can be the liaison, that can be the middle person, that can, we can pull them by engaging them, and then you can then make that connection to history or vice versa. You can see how, all right, that's the first piece of paper was made. I don't know, I've never learned that in school, but a lesson on paper or a lesson on capitalism. And then from there, you take that lesson and then you introduce them to, well, I know you may think paper is just paper, but paper made this, And so we found that it works in all different avenues and all different.
Yeah, I can see the civics. I definitely see the civics connections as well. I was just curious where folks were using it in general. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Civics, humanities, and advisory. And lastly, I want to show you this last thing. Well, this is an example of actually what the teacher's guide looks like. So to your left, you'll find an article called "How Much $1 Costs." And this, a college student had went to Senegal, and when he went to Senegal, his definition of success changed when he met a man who had the most horrible shoes ever, but was happy. And, after reading that article, an educator can tell students, because again, we're meeting them where they are, but then here's the educational component that backs it. So they would, you know, class 1 magazine would be distributed. They can look through it. Class 2, they'd read the interview. So that becomes that whole learn. Class 3, they would build. They would plan their own interview. They would go interview somebody in the community. They would find somebody on social media interview, or maybe even a classmate. And that class 4, they would then reflect on their experience using our reflection and personal portrait documents. And so this is just a little bit more. This, I know all of this speaks your language. As educators, I know this speaks your language. This is what y'all came to see. And lastly, I'll just show you this last thing. This is the last thing I'll show you. I'll take more questions and we'll wrap this up because I know we are running almost short on time. So this is Shay. And I'll play it first, explain it later.
It's finally here. The moment you've all been waiting for. Or better yet, the moment I've been waiting for. Senior year, supposedly the time of our lives, or so they say. Prom, homecoming, SATs, and team drama that really never matters the next day.
I have an idea. I dare you to stop hanging out with people like her.
Moments, the memories, the good and the bad. I wonder, do you know what it's like to wake up? It's finally here.
Shoot,
The moment
I'm so sorry.
you've all been waiting.
Yeah. White ass town, privileged ass students, zero diversity.
Do you? The grass starts as a seed on both sides. I can't help but blame myself. I can't help but make attempts to erase what was. This school year, I learned one thing. Always be kind, because you never know what someone else is going through. But now, it's all over. Sincerely.
So I wanted to show you all that as well, because again, with the goal of using branding principles and meeting students where they are, I found that students are on Netflix, they're on YouTube, they're on Amazon Prime, they're on HBO, they're watching television. And, you know, I remember at one point in time, I'm sure we can all remember this, it was a show called 13 Reasons Why. And when 13 Reasons Why came out, when 13 Reasons Why came out, there were middle school students, high school students. They saw, like high schools and middle schools saw an increase in suicidal ideation and in suicide attempts. And that was on the basis of watching this show. And so my thing was, if students are engaged in media to that degree, almost to a fault, then how can we as educators, how can we as brands, as companies, as entrepreneurs create content that they can use to learn from? And so we created a 16-minute piece that was shot in Connecticut, all of it, and it's supported by a facilitator's guide. So that discussion can be held around the topic of race, identity, belonging, empathy, and compassion. And of those discussions, there are then activities that allow educators to go deeper into that theme, that thematic unit around race, identity, belonging, empathy, compassion, race, and diversity. And then even forward within this same facilitator's guide, we provide extension and resources to help continue that conversation on race, identity, belonging, empathy, compassion. And so to give you an idea, this is what it would look like, what it looks like. The best practices for virtual discussions, for student-led discussions. This is an example of like the identity and belonging, the questions. And again, all of this and this whole branding fits the social studies model. It fits the idea of, you know, meeting students where they are, applying branding principles. And so, yeah, yeah, that's all. I would love to hear feedback. I'd love to hear thoughts. I'd love to learn more about what you all are dealing with in your classroom with your students during this school year, or what you're hearing from other people, other educators and teachers, feel free to share.
I love this idea of meeting the students where they are. I think that's really, really important. Using the tools that they're used to, using the formats that they're used to, those little sound bites that they're getting from everywhere, and using it to kind of change the narrative. I like that.
Yeah, I had to jump in late. I'm sorry about that, but it's an intriguing magazine. I'm more at the middle school level, but I know that, with the civics and digital citizenship that we've been teaching, that there's a lot of nice connections here, because we love always connecting back to that identity and belonging, and pushing kids to be, active in their communities and to pursue questions. So looks like a great magazine. Thank you for sharing all those pieces.
I appreciate what you were sharing, just because when I've used things like the mood meter or other assessments this school year, the students are definitely in the low energy quadrants. So whatever assessment you're using, and that's what they've been sharing. And I just am looking at culture as it just is bringing energy. Like even just going onto the website, I'm feeling energized. So I could really gather what you're saying about branding, because what you were wanting to put out is just so clear. My question is, it looked like you had gone in maybe through a high school portal, like you had put a code in. So do I, as the educator, then get to kind of see a summary of those survey results, or is that just used for research purposes or personal self-assessment? Thank you.
Good question, and thank you both for your comments. So for the access code is something that educators receive, and they can then pass that to all students who are subscribed. And that is on the digital, for the digital format. There is also a print format where you actually would get a print magazine, a print teacher's guide, print everything. And the only thing that would be digital is the, again, SEL pre and post assessment. The SEL pre and post assessment, we actually assess and analyze it. So at the end of the school, at the end of the first semester, we'll say if you were to participate now, sometime in January, after all students have, completed it, we then give you that analysis for that specific semester. Then by the end of the year, we give you 2 analyses. We give you the second semester, and then we also give you a comparative analysis of how they've grown collectively. So knowing that information, it allows for us as educators to see, okay, well, if we know students have grown to this capacity, or they haven't grown in these areas, then we can then work towards growing them in these areas for the next school year. Again, it's really all about seeing where these students are, and sometimes and oftentimes you need to make it so seamless that these students are having more fun than they think they are learning.
Thank you. That's really great. So I, as the educator, I'm going to get to use that data, but you are using it too for your future additions. That's awesome.
Exactly.
And you were just asking about this school year, because I work with juniors and seniors in high school, and then I also work with college students. I'm just really worried that essential time period when you really are becoming more confident with who you are at about 16, 17, and then that keeps growing in your early 20s, that right now with COVID, those experiences that we have, or where, if you want to call it networking, or where we're just taking risks to put ourselves outside of our comfort zone, to kind of honestly explore things that end up being maybe our future careers, who knows? That's an area that I'm worried about for this specific generation of like people in the age of like 16 to 22 right now, and having COVID. As much as we were talking about some positives of doors that have opened, but how many doors are closing right now, just because of the limited movement in our communities and things like that.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I do. And, you know, one thing that I've been doing that we've been trying to do, you know, the whole reason why we started Culture was to honestly help people assess where they are, because we talk about, I've been in so many conversations on diversity, on race, on just like equality. And it is my firm belief, after having these conversations, after doing some self-assessment, that we need to start with ourselves. Many of these students are just, this is why I said in the beginning, culture is inherited, culture is created. Culture with a C is inherited, culture with a K is created. And many of our students are carrying those ideologies, those ideas, and those beliefs, those values that many of their families have been carrying since the 1600s. And so as we are in a world where it's evolving, it's changing, it's becoming more inclusive, we're understanding, all right, that is wrong. Many of our forefathers and our family members really don't understand that logic, that the importance of that. And so culture, all it does at its like foundation, its ethos, is about having students really sit with themselves and ask themselves those questions, so that in the classroom, a teacher can then take the mantle and push it forward. We provide the door, the policy, like provide the platform for this space, for this, to create that culture. So yes, I just wanted to share that, you know, and in regard to the whole, you know, to jobs and careers, and again, I'm still speaking at high schools virtually. I've been doing like a whole virtual like talk. I did one in Westwood, Massachusetts, and students will not feel that they can be anything if we don't push a message that they can be anything. And although we are in a time where everyone is socially distant, I feel as though each of us we've navigated. And so it's important for us to then teach those students how we've navigated, so then they too can find their own, use their autonomy skills to then navigate themselves. So I just wanted to share that, but very valid point. You're so right.